Good morning. Welcome again. So I already welcomed maybe 3/4 of the crowd earlier and reminded people, turn off your phones or put them on silent. And literally, I just remembered to turn mine on silent after I'd given that big announcement. So do that because you're going to be captivated by today's presentation. It's a perfect title for a beautiful book. And we also have Steve Sari, who collaborated with Amy Urich on this book, and he is here as well. But it's a fabulous book, it's fabulous artwork, and we're excited to be here with Amy. I want to thank everybody for coming. This is part of the annual lecture series at the Ding Darling Wildlife Society, which is the Friends of the Refuge. And April's going to show a little video. Many of you have seen it many times. You can probably talk along with it. But it never hurts to be reminded about the good that the Ding Darling Wildlife Society does to help the refuge do the work that they can't do alone. And so we're going to show it again. And for those who haven't seen it, you're going to love it. So here we go, April.
The J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge of today isn't here by chance. In the early 1940s, J. Norwood Darling, for whom the refuge is now named, was instrumental in the effort to block the sale of environmentally valuable land to developers. Ultimately, at his urging, President Harry S. Truman signed an executive order creating this refuge in 1945. In 1982, the Ding Darling Wildlife Society Friends of the Refuge began. Its purpose was to educate visitors about the importance of protecting lands, waters, and wildlife. In 1999, this group of volunteers stepped up to lead the building of the refuge's Visitor and Education Center. This was the first partnership of its kind, where a Friends group raised money to construct a federal building. And it is still the hub of the refuge today. Why was this necessary? And what is the Society's role today? Well, over the decades, the refuge budget has been cut 60%, and it has half the staff it formerly did. Meanwhile, visitors have increased 66% to nearly 1 million people annually. The refuge cannot meet their growing needs alone. So the Ding Darling Wildlife Society works to fill in the gaps where federal funding falls short. Most importantly, the refuge keeps Ding Darling's spirit alive by educating generation after generation about the importance of conservation, so visitors from around the world will take that knowledge back to the communities where they live. Today, with the help of generous donors, the Society supports the refuge in these primary areas: land acquisition and restoration, advocacy, conservation education, wildlife protection, biology and water quality research, and internships.
What really draws people to Sandville and the core objective of people is to come and enjoy the J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge. I think Ding Darling would just be ecstatic over the fact that there are people that are carrying on his legacy. I mean, he obviously gave from his pocketbook, gave from his heart, but he would be ever so gratified to know that that legacy that he started continues today.
The best legacies are not what you do for yourself today, but what you do for the next generation.
I wanted to be at the refuge because there were things that I could do here. Every time I come to volunteer, I see the important work that's being done by the Ding Darling Wildlife Society. I see the smile on children's faces and families who are enjoying nature and wildlife. It is so wonderful, it really is, to know that all of this work will be protected for the next generation because of the work that the Society has accomplished. Because if we don't do it, who will? Who will do it?
To that end, the Ding Darling Wildlife Society is dedicated to ensuring that Ding's legacy lives on at the JN Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge. We invite you to join us and our thousands of members in supporting the refuge for generations to come.
That is who we are. It does a much better job than me saying it, but we are proud of the work we do. Thank you. You all get it. You know, you are part of the Ding family. You're part of the conservation family, whether you live here on the island or not. You love the artwork of Ikki Matsumoto and what he brought to inspire people through artwork. Ding Darling was an artist. He won a Pulitzer Prize for it, and it was telling the message of conservation. Ikki's work does so much of that as well in showing the beauty of the wildlife in a way that he saw it and wanted to display it for those who loved the wildlife around us and the important connection between wildlife and people too. So thanks for being a part of that family. I want to thank our sponsors. You know, this lecture series doesn't just happen, and as you learned, we raise support to do things like this, as well as all the other efforts that we have at the refuge and off the refuge. And our sponsors today are Bill and Lori Harkey. You know, you also saw them, thank you. You also saw them, Bill is a member of our board. We have our board president here as well, Sarah Ashton, but Bill and Lori also put a lot of time in, and Lori was helping with the lecture series, and Bill's checking everybody's temperatures. They put the work in with, as well as their love of their financial support too. So thank you, Harkeys, for sponsoring this lecture. I'm going to start with a little quote. I grew up in the midst of art and creativity, says Amy Urich, whose Japanese-born father worked in commercial art, newspaper advertising design, and textbook illustration before moving to Sanibel. As the youngest Matsumoto child, Amy spent most of her life on Sanibel, often helping her parents in their gallery and tagging along at art shows. The Matsumotos were a close-knit family, and when Amy wasn't at school, she'd often be in the gallery with her parents. She's back here nodding her head. And with family is important. She grew up with a close-knit family. Her husband, Steve, and daughter, Snow, are here with us as well. And family's a big part of the Matsumoto connection. Following last year's publication of the first book ever to chronicle the life and work of legendary Southwest Florida artist Ikki Matsumoto, Amy addresses the captivating art and times of my father, Ikki Matsumoto. This is the first book that collects her father's art and took nearly 3 years working alongside and collaborating with Steve Sorry and others, searching social media, calling galleries, talking to local collectors to complete the book, which includes more than 100 of his creations, a number of which have never been shown in public, as they were part of private collections. The book was a labor of love, and just as his work was to him and his family a labor of love. The captivating art and times of my father, Ikki Matsumoto, the book of which is for sale in there. Many of you bought it today, and she will be here afterward to sign it. But please join me in welcoming Amy Urich.
Good morning. Okay. I've never spoken to a group before, so bear with me. I'm a little nervous, but at least I am not as nervous as my father used to be before shows. He had shingles one time at the Schoolhouse Gallery and was sitting in the corner going like this to people. And another time he was supposed to do a speech at South Seas. And for 2 weeks beforehand, he had hiccups. He got shots, he got this, and nothing worked until the night before when my mother called and canceled, and miraculously they went away as soon as the call was over. So, the reason we did the book, at least my mother and I's reason for doing it is, you know, you've all read stories on Dad through the newspapers, through the years and stuff, but I wanted to show more personal side to him. you know, the family photos, which I have quite a bit on here. Here, let's see if I can do this. So, you know, the far one is my dad, obviously, in Japan. And this one here is my dad and his father, Cassidy Matsumoto, which was a very famous children's book illustrator in Japan. So, and he was considered the founding pioneer of manga. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Japanese comic books. Let's see. And does anybody know what Ikki Matsumoto means? Have you ever heard that? Ikki Matsumoto. Ikki is, okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead. Tell them what Ikki Matsumoto is.
Okay. Ikki Matsumoto means single horseman under a pine tree. So Matsumoto is under a pine tree. Ikki is single horseman. So these are, he had 7 siblings. The oldest one, I don't know how'd you point with that? Oh, she's well, you can see my dad, of course. These are my grandfather. Most of those are siblings, my dad. The dad was the second born son. And in order for my parents, or my grandparents, to marry, because they were both only children, the oldest son was given to the maternal grandparents to carry on their name. Only in Japan, right? So I just wanted to show you a little bit of, you know, pictures from Japan. This is my grandfather's work. So he was before Hello Kitty came out. So if you maybe would have waited a little bit longer, maybe he'd be as popular, you know, here as, well, Hello Kitty. So the middle picture is Dad with his sister Rumi. Out of the 7 kids, how many is it? 5 of them became artists. So the oldest one, he was a sculptor, and he taught at the Japanese American school in Tokyo. And then the 3 girls were all into quilting and fiber arts. Rumi is actually the inspiration of my mother's weavings, because her husband and her were going back to Japan for a year, and she's like, can you store my loom? You know, so since we were storing the loom, or since Mom was, she goes, well, you might as well learn how to use it. So, and off she went. There's the single horseman. This is I love this photo. This is the day in 1955, they're on the ship that my dad took from Tokyo to Los Angeles with his father. So they were there saying goodbye. And so there he goes. And then when he got to Los Angeles, he had to take a train up to Indianapolis, where he went to school at John Herron Art Institute. And as his brother Keith, the older one, was already there studying sculpture. He'd been there for a year and such. Second summer into school, he got a chance to go to Cincinnati Art Academy and take a course with Charlie Harper, which I'm sure a lot of you know too. And fell in love with him. So, well, fall came and he transferred and studied under Charlie the remainder, and were lifelong friends. You know, when Charlie didn't have time to do a job, or he just didn't, you know, think it was right for him or something, he would recommend Dad. Like The Joy of Cooking was he was recommended for it. The Do It Yourself. I did bring my books, which I have been looking. Okay. Do It Yourself, so you guys can kind of look at. I They are sealed because they are pop-up animals inside. I don't want them to pop out. So, okay. Take a breath. My husband says, take a breath.
You're doing good. You're doing great.
I talk really fast. My dad could never understand me because I talk too fast. Okay. At the Cincinnati Art Academy, that is where he met my mother, Polly. And she wasn't studying fiber arts at the time. She was studying painting. And, well, Dad was supposed to go back after art school to Japan because he was already in a prearranged marriage lined up. So, well, he was having a little too much fun, and Ben came along. So, but, you know, did anybody see Arthur Fiddler? Your buttons aren't working. Sorry, guys. There should be one with Tshirts. So, you're all familiar with the Arthur Fiddler and the Beach Box with all the little guys playing violins and the conductor up front?
Yeah.
Okay. Arthur Fiedler was my father's favorite conductor. And if you look closely, they're all right-handed, but one. That's Ty, he was a lefty. So you go, see, here you are. And then, and then also joggerhead turtles with all the little turtles with the numbers on their back running through the water. The number 11, also Ty. That was the extent of Ty's fame. So when we moved to the island in '75, we found Burnett Cottage, and then we found the Schoolhouse Gallery with Fred Fox and Clarice. So they started, you know, he fell in love with the Sandpipers because they're so funny, you know, they're humorous. And he would do all these little Sandpiper series, and they were selling really well, you know. And he goes, okay, I think we can make a living here, you know. I can feed my kids, so that's why we stayed, you know. We could make it, and he knew he was going to be okay. Now, during the summer times, they got a little tight, you know, because season, you know, all of the people that are here all year round, that it just dies off. But we would just have to take out a loan for the summer to feed us. But let's see, she's still working on it. Okay, in 1979, you know that Big Arts was open. And Mom and Dad were one of the founders, along with Pete Smith, Mike Klein, I think Mike Klein might be the only one that's left, and he's 103. He was a potter, and his wife was a weaver. But the city of Sanibel wanted to tax the artist. And the artists were like, what are you talking about? Well, how can you tax us? We're hardly making anything. So they got together and they went and fought City Hall and won. And so then they decided, well, we're kind of organized, let's make it official, and started Big Arts. Because, of course, Mom loves music, and she's like, we can have concerts. So my brother remembers, we were talking about it, remembers setting up folding chairs outside of that cottage, you know, So after, of course, I'm not sure if it was my mom. My mom's kind of bossy. She has a way of getting what's good for the community. You know, she went to City Hall and asked them for land, which they gave us the land for where Big Arts is now. And is it Paul Newman? Was he the realtor? John, okay. I think he donated the cottage and was moved by Flint and Doyle onto location, which sets the idea in my mother's head later on when it comes to Cassidy House. So we had all kinds of events. We had Livingston Taylor, you know, James Taylor's brother, and had art shows, of course, craft fairs. You know, I grew up in craft fairs, running around from this to that, and, you know. I'm trying to remember what my flag said. So that was in 79. In 80, my grandfather had like 7 strokes in Japan. So my father thought he should be closer. So we packed up, we moved to Oregon, so it would be a fast plane ride, and we stayed there for 364 days. One day short of being able to write it off on the taxes. So, but as a move. So we moved home, and, you know, because they just didn't sell out there, you know. He wasn't as well loved as he is here. And, oh, I don't have it here. He also did the, okay, got commissioned from the bank, CNS Bank, to do the 30 originals, which are no longer on the island, which is a shame. When Bank of America bought them out, there were some at this branch I saw, but most of them were at the corporate offices upstairs. So the only people that are seeing it are the people that are working there, but unfortunately, you know, it won't be shared. So, let's see. Oh, I backtracked. 1985, Dad was one of 50 artists in the United States that Nancy Reagan asked to do a hand-painted egg for the Easter roll. Are you having any left? Okay, I want to show you the egg. Because most people haven't seen it. Steve's seen it. I don't know if any of you saw his podcast that he did with the Sanibel Captiva guy. Yeah, and they were asking him, have you seen the egg? Well, that egg is now, well, it went through the Smithsonian for a while, but is now in a permanent collection at the Ronald Reagan Library in California. So my husband, because I talked about it all the time, like, oh, I'd love to be able to get a picture of the egg for the book, and my husband, as sweet as he is, he went and did some research, called the Smithsonian, and then they located it, and then he called them, and we got a photo of it. So it was very sweet. Okay, so in 1987, go back to the house. They were going to tear down these 3 old houses right between Island Inn Road and the Jolly Roger on that corner. And they tore down 2, unfortunately, but the Cassidy House my mother saved, which is now the gallery, it's now Tower, but it was our gallery. And the back building, which is the restaurant, was the garage / servants' quarters back then. Now it's a restaurant. So it took 8 hours to move it from that location and they had people out there holding up power lines to get the house under, and if you ever want to see the progression of it, I gave the Tower Gallery an album of all the photos, so it's kind of cool to look at. I did have one. So, I'm doing what my mother did, and because none of us have memories, she knows, like, oh yeah, okay. She goes to the bio, my dad's bio, to find out where we were. So let's see. Right after we opened the gallery in 1990, this Japanese television came and followed my dad around for a week. And it's a 30-minute documentary. Unfortunately, it is all in Japanese, except for Jack Thomas, which is another island resident. He was the only one that was speaking English. He was out, took them all out on the boat. But that was it. I did post it on YouTube. So if you Google him or look him up on YouTube, you'll find it. It's still fun to watch because it's got all the pictures of the island and, well, Dad. So, and then in 1997, my mother got sick, and we ended up having to close the gallery or sell the gallery. They were going to move to New Mexico because that was always her dream, to live out in Santa Fe or Taos. But with the cancer that she had, she was afraid to be too far from Moffett. So they bought in Arcadia, so, which is nice. They were up there for a little bit, got homesick, and moved back again. So back and forth, back and forth. This will always be my home, you know. Every time I come across the bridge, I kind of tear up because I'm like, I feel like I'm being embraced by the island again. A couple years ago, when the Water Association out here was looking for a new GM, my husband applied because he is the director of utilities for City of Plantation over on the other coast, and was familiar, and I was like, oh, I get to move back to the island, hopefully. It fell through. But we were all bummed because, you know, I'd like to be back on the island. Let's see. So as you know, my father never said no to anyone when they're wanting images for T-shirts for the Rotary, the posters for the Island Reporter, the big arts, of course. He did a couple. The Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, and many more. And I see an otter melon over there. Of course, my family's wearing bamboo tigers. No more Ikki shirts? It's kind of nice when you go, oh, you got an Ikki shirt? What you got on there? Oh, the night heron, yes, shades of green. It's nice when we were at the craft fair last week, and seeing everybody's older shirts. One guy, and then the one even had an autograph of Dad on there because he would sign them. They had to go over to the booth. So.
It's still having difficulty loading.
Okay. Well, can you find me my egg?
Is the egg in the book?
No, I didn't get there in time.
Yeah, really.
Well, I have it on my tablet, so when you come and get your book signed, I'll show it to you if you really want to see it. Maybe she'll find it. But yes, it's, you know, they have grandkids and they moved away, they came back, they went to Ohio. My parents were married for like 55 years, I think, and moved over 60 times. You know, my mom liked to move. She was a Gemini. Even if it, like during art school, they moved from one floor to another for some reason, you know, or early on in their marriage, after the first 2 kids were born, they moved back to Japan for a while. I don't know why, and then came back. And then, of course, the Oregon, and then came back. But when they chose Sanibel, it was between, we had a choice. Well, they had a choice. I was too little. Sanibel, Australia, or St. Martin's Island. But of course, Sanibel won. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's in the early, when we first got to the island, it should be past that, that's in 79. That's 87. Nothing past that?
Oh, just more pictures of that. I don't know. Maybe it was a different version. I'll show you the egg if you really want to know. So, I guess I'll take questions if anybody has them. Yes, ma'am.
Where in Ohio were you, where the farm was out in Ohio?
The farm was in Loveland, which on the north side of Cincinnati. I was born at Marymount. I don't know where the boys were. Somewhere in Cincinnati. My mother was from Georgetown, Ohio, which is a little tiny town. So, anybody else? Yes.
I have a chair that I think your father designed and your brother built or.
Out of wood, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that at all?
That was about the time that the Japanese guys came and did the documentary, because there's video of them and like painting and sanding and, in the pictures. Well, Ty, I don't know if you know, he's a builder, and he designs the home. He's done a few on the island. I'm not sure exactly how that really came about, why, whose idea it was, but it wasn't, everybody was involved, They were painting, the different parts. Ty built it, so they're very heavy and sturdy, They're definitely not delicate work. No, but there's some great pieces out there.
Mine is look at your Bible.
Oh, take a little island with you. Which one was it?
Yeah. Well, it's two plans.
Oh, okay. With the little berries. Yeah.
Yeah, and my memory of the story was that your parents wanted a way for Ty to earn some money.
Probably. Yeah, because he was newly married.
Or, yeah, or he was going to college.
Mhm.
An architect.
Yeah, he was going to FIU.
And so I think this was probably a sample, maybe hours maybe.
They just did it for a while. It wasn't like a mass production because, it's them working on them, but, there's some great pieces out there. I think Big Arts ended up getting something, donated to them, a whole set, dining room set, but that's, again, been gone, so.
I think this was meant to be a dining room chair, very large.
Yeah. It's a king chair. He did mermaids, and somebody has an alligator coffee table, and the alligators are crosshatched, so it's support with the tail and the eyes or whatever. So it was pretty cool. Yes, ma'am.
So as a child growing up, what was your favorite type of artwork that your dad did?
My favorite piece is watermelon. Because it reminds me of sitting out on the steps of the burnout cottage, eating watermelon, because we weren't allowed to eat that messy in the house. And Dad is the spitter. He's the one that's spitting seeds out. He was good. Maybe he practiced in Japan with all the siblings, So.
Another question?
I'm just curious about your childhood, what kind of art did you do?
I did jewelry.
Question.
Yeah, that is a good question because I forgot that part. I did jewelry because do you know how terrifying it is to have somebody that, you know, that's your dad that everybody loves and you're like, I don't want to compete with that at all. So I never painted. I mean, I drew as, you know, a little kid, you know, hey, what do you think of this? Oh, well, you need to move this line over there. And, you know, it's not like, oh, that's wonderful, honey. No, he critiqued it. Not in a bad way, but, you know, but still. So, but it was a little daunting. So we went with jewelry. I did not pick up a paintbrush until about 3 months after he passed. And something inside me was just needed to be released. And I couldn't think of what I could do so I painted. I picked up, you know, and I was really big, so, you know, on canvas, and I did all these great zebra butts, because if you look at the back of those zebras, it's really cool. It's all the lines coming together, you know, and I did those, so. Yes?
What time frame did you live in Burnout Cottage, and how did that come to pass? Do you know how your parents
Found it?
Yeah.
Probably just somebody who recommended maybe Palmer and Bissell, the ladies that owned it. But we moved there like a month after we actually got to the island and stayed for a couple of years. That's right, because I remember riding, you know, through swampy water trying to get to the bus stop at the end, because I don't know if you've ever been down that road. It's much better now. Yes, ma'am.
I'm interested in his Japanese-ness and how he navigated that, and how did he come to understand himself as a Japanese American, and how did that show itself in your family, and how do you think it showed itself in his art? Just a simple
Yeah, can you cut that in half? No. Okay, well, you see some styles of Japanese, not like the typical, is it sumi writing or something like, he's not into that. But if there was one that I think looks very oriental, is the water turkey, which is an anhinga, and it's very natural tones and soft. But I think the Christmas, if you look at my grandfather's work, see if I can find a big enough picture here. So this is some of my grandfather's work, which I'll let you look through over there. But very crisp lines, little girls. My grandfather was fascinated with Western clothing and stuff. So he would drag my dad, you know, as a little boy to the newsstand and go through all the magazines and pick them out so he could, you know, draw from. So, safe like that. Yes, Steve? So if I did not go with my parents to an art opening in Key West or wherever, maybe because I had school or something, Esperanza Woodring, I'm sure you're all familiar with her, she used to babysit. So we would have fish for breakfast, fish for lunch, so, but yeah. And her biscuits, you've seen in the pictures of Charlie McCulllough. We also befriended Charlie McCulllough and Ann when we lived at the Burnout. We would, they would smoke oysters. They'd go out to pick out of the mangroves back in the day when they were still, you know, good, and roasted oysters on the campfire and ate them, sat around and ate those. So there's a lot of great pictures that Charlie took of Mom and Dad over the years, and me. So, anybody else? Did I answer that? Good enough?
One more question, Zach, do you have a question?
I was just curious what he did in the Joy of Cooking cookbook.
Oh, okay. He did the illustrations. There's another illustrator also, but the way to tell that if they were my dad's, look for the big hands, because those were my mom's. Then Mrs. Becker, Marion Becker, when my dad took her the illustrations, she's like, oh my God, these hands are big. They were my mom's. We ate very well while he was doing that, because in order for him to draw the prep and stuff like that, we had to have roast and so forth. So we got those all sent home. So it was nice.
All right.
Good. I have a trivia question. See if anybody's paying attention. Hold on. Can I get that?
I'll hold it.
Okay, you hold it. Okay, make sure I.
She has a trivia question.
I can't give you that one. Okay. What was the name of the house that we moved to that became the gallery on Tarpon Bay?
Cassidy House.
Cassidy House. Yes.
Cassidy House. Ooh, you get a gift. And it's not bad luck when the giver opens
Okay. And who was his instructor at the Cincinnati Arts Center? Oh my God. Okay, huh?
All right, what was the name of the school in Indiana? All right.
Just so you know, this year is Year of the Tiger in Japan. And what was the number of Kai's turtle? 11.
She said it first.
Okay.
Hate it when something goes wrong, right?
Where can we buy those umbrellas?
Okay, I had a question about the egg, but since nobody saw the egg, you can't answer the question. So, on Arthur Fiddler, how can you tell it was my brother?
Okay, hand up over there.
Okay, so again, apologies for technology. We will try to get some of those slides up for the taped version so that people will be able to see the amazing slides that Amy brought. But we are so thrilled that Amy and Steve and Snow and Steve, and his wife could be here and be with us to tell a story. You don't always know, and very seldom know, the background history behind why people come to a location, what inspires them, the little stories about little pieces of artwork. Who would have guessed that the left-hander was your brother? And all of that sort of thing, and that the little girl was Amy. So how cool is that? What I think is the coolest is the story of how they did become captivated by crossing this causeway and seeing Sanibel as home, and feeling a part of this community, which I'm sure at times was difficult as a Japanese American, and having to deal with a lot of that. And the fact that they found this as home, Amy considers it a home, and coming back to home when she is here. We love the artwork. We love that you feel such a connection to this island, and his artwork is just that. It gives everybody a connection to something beautiful and something surreal, and what he brought to this island and the art community and the love of the wildlife through Ding Darling and the entire island, and the stories of collaboration. starting big arts, starting all of that. This island is built on collaboration, from Ding Darling to SECF to Crow to the city of Sanibel, but just getting the artists together to get the work together and be heard, and then starting the whole big arts. It's amazing, and this island is amazing because of people like your dad and so many others that have made this island what it is. And we appreciate all of you being here and being a part of Sanibel and Ding Darling and learning a bit more about Ikki. And like I said, we will have those slides up on our taped version so that they can be a part of that. But thank you, Amy. She will be up front. I'm going to let her leave and start heading that way. And she'll be here to sign the books if you guys have books that you want signed. And she'll have some of the old artwork that's just for seeing it as well.
Right. Also, Steve is here, so you can get him to sign your book. Real quick, we won 3 book awards for this, and we won the Florida Book Award, the IPP Award, which is an independent publishers, and the Lopresti. So if you see that these have stickers on them and yours don't, I brought extra stickers if you would like. You will have to see my daughter Snow.
And Steve will be there as well. And Snow's in the Year of the Tiger t-shirt. And she too has expressed interest and is in the art world. So we're excited to see the progress of her skills in the art world. And we're thrilled that it's staying in the family as well. So thank you everybody for being here. Amy and Steve will be back there behind the table. And we appreciate all of you being here. The next lecture is with Doug Chadwick. He was on WGCU interviewed. It will not be here. It will be at the Congregational Church. Same time at the Congregational Church on Periwinkle. So if you're signed up for Ding on the Wing, you'll see that. But it should be a great lecture as well. Thanks for coming.